Alright, what's up guys? This is Manalki, and today I just wanted to talk a little bit about graphics in games and production values in games and why to me personally they're not terribly important. Now this is an opinion that a lot of people are not going to share and not going to agree with and all that. And that's totally fine. This isn't meant as an attack or an insult of any kind to anybody or what they like to get out of games. I just wanted to kind of share my own thoughts and just kind of go over why, like I said, graphics and such aren't really super important to me personally. So it seems to me when a new game's coming out, or it's in early access or it's on Kickstarter or whatever, it seems to me that a lot of people their first instinct is to judge it on on the graphics of the game. Like they check out the screenshots, they check out the videos and whatever, and they make a lot of judgment based on just the visual appeal of the game. And again, like that's totally fine. If that's the sort of thing that people like to get out of games, if they just like it to look good, that's cool. But me personally, I'm more inclined to look at what's the gameplay like. You know, is it boring? Is it fun? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Does it have an interesting storyline to keep me hooked? Because those are the kinds of things I look for. Like, I'm not so much into how it looks, but if it's got a good storyline or if the gameplay is compelling, then I'll play it. And the reason that personally the graphics don't matter, I guess, to me is that if it hooks me in those other ways, then what happens, I find it's about the imagination for me personally. It's when my imagination kind of takes over. So you take like a super high fidelity game, right? Like really nice graphics. While it looks good initially, I find it leaves less room for the imagination because you're basically being explicitly told or shown, I guess, what things look like and what's actually happening. And when that's the case, I find you're limited to that very production value and how much effort they've put into the visuals and stuff and the animations and all these things. Now, quite often, it's a very high limit. Like, quite often they've done a really nice job of it, which is fine. But ultimately, you are still limited to what you actually see. By contrast, like when you're playing a game with a very very low fidelity or that doesn't even have much graphics, more like representative tokens of like units or such, it really forces your imagination to kick in. And so instead of seeing you know two little symbols collide together on a map and apparently do nothing, what you actually end up seeing in your mind with your imagination is like armies clashing. Do you know what I mean? It's like in like in a game like, let's say, I don't know, like Warframe or something that looks good like Skyrim or whatever. When you do something in that game, it's not a representation of what could be happening. It's kind of an explicit demonstration of what is happening. So you kind of take it at face value. Whereas with a game that has really either really bad graphics or representative graphics, as I guess you might call them, it forces your imagination to kick in. And they say that your imagination is the best graphics ever. Nothing can ever live up to your imagination and all these things. Now, not everybody likes to use their imagination, and again, that's totally cool. This isn't a shot at them or what they like or whatever, but I would rather play a game that I find fun and compelling and interesting, and it looks like crap, rather than play a game that is like completely gorgeous, but it's boring as hell. And to be honest, again, in my personal humble opinion, that sort of thing happens once in a while. It's been done. I don't want to point any fingers or name any names, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. The original Assassin's Creed game. Now, I haven't played any of the subsequent Assassin's Creed games, but I'm just talking about the original, the very original. That game was beautiful. It looked so good. It was just like so nice to look at. Well, holy balls, was it ever boring. I've never played a more boring... Okay, well, I shouldn't say that I've never played a more boring game, but you know what I mean. Like it was just I found it so boring and so repetitive. Now I little disclaimer, calling a game repetitive is not necessarily a bad thing, because if you think about it, what game isn't repetition? You know, all games are just repetition, repetition, which is fine. So saying a game is repetitive isn't a bad thing, but in my opinion, there is such thing as good repetition and bad repetition. And in my humble opinion, the original Assassin's Creed is bad repetition. Although it had nice graphics and nice production values, it didn't do anything for me personally, because I was bored of that game inside of an hour. You know what I mean? It was just so, well, boring. Sorry. And I'm not trying to insult that game. A lot of people love that game. Obviously, it spawned a whole franchise, right? But me personally, it just didn't really, it didn't work. It didn't work for me, you know. By contrast, you look at a game like Hearts of Iron, and I think a lot of people would literally take one look at that game and just click it away. Like they can't do it. And again, that's fine. I'm not trying to criticize those people, but when they look at that sort of game coming from, you know, like being used to something like Assassin's Creed or whatever, they might look at that and they'll just be like, what the hell is this? Like, oh, look, a map with a bunch of squares on it. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean shit all to me. And just click it away. Whereas, you know, like I was saying before, like when I look at something like that, again, I don't see squares. I see armies. And when the squares bump into each other, I don't see squares bumping into each other. I see these epic battles of armies clashing and people dying and all this. And so I think it's a perspective thing, I guess. It's all in how you look. I mean, you either see literally what you're looking at on the screen in the case of a really high fidelity game, or you just see the tokens of a low fidelity game, or maybe you see in your imagination what's kind of going on, you know, like what's meant to be going on behind those tokens, what's really happening, you know what I mean, within the context of the game world. I mean, so I guess it's just all perspective and all imagination and that sort of thing. And I'm of the opinion of, I wouldn't personally judge a game on its visuals. You know, I think a really, really great game can look bad, and a beautiful, beautiful game can be boring as all hell and pointless. Plus, there's the issue of hidden gems. You know, there's a lot of really, really great cheesy games out there, which when I say cheesy, I mean their production values. They're cheesy, 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 but they're a lot of fun, and there's kind of these undiscovered gems in the rough. And I love looking through Steam, finding crap like that. You know, you pay like 50 cents, and you think, oh, this is going to be interesting, and then you play it, and it's actually kind of awesome. Because I find a lot of times in those cases, they didn't have a big budget for the production values. They didn't have all the money for all the animators and all this kind of thing. So all of their development cycle goes towards the gameplay or the story or whatever, and it ends up making a really compelling game. Whereas some of these AAA titles, they spend so much time and money making it look good that there's no time left over to make it fun. But again, that's just one man's opinion. That's just my thoughts on the subject. I'd love to hear yours. Feel free to post them in the comments below. Obviously, it's a very polarizing topic, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So, thanks for listening to my crap. I appreciate you sticking with it. So, yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.